Wyndham Hotels and Resorts makes travel possible for all. Whether it's the long haulers looking for a great cup of coffee, a roomier rest for the on-a-whim road trippers, or a place to make summer memories with the whole family. No matter who you are, where you're going, or why, with 24 trusted brands to choose from like La Quinta, Days Inn, and Super 8, your Wyndham is waiting. Get the lowest price at WyndhamHotels.com. Restrictions apply. Visit website for more details.
All eyes are on Boise today as Idaho's trial of the century begins. The stakes are high for defendant Chad Daybell with the death penalty on the line. His doomsday beliefs allegedly led to the deaths of 4 people, including 2 children who were found in his own backyard. Today on CityCast Boise, we're breaking down the trial, what to expect, and what new evidence we might see. It's Wednesday, April 10th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. This morning, we have Nate Eaton with East Idaho News joining us. And Nate, you've covered this story from the beginning in late 2019. But for anyone who is unfamiliar with Chad Daybell and what he's been accused of, can you give a really basic breakdown of this case and the timeline?
Yeah, so it all started when 2 kids went missing in the Rexburg area, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and this was in the fall of 2019. Police went public with it in December because they were trying to piece together all of these many pieces in a complex puzzle. And Chad Daybell married those kids' mother, Lori Vallow, and then they took off, left Rexburg, and went to Hawaii. And before they got married, Lori's 4th husband, Charles Vallow, was shot and killed in Arizona. So you have her 4th husband being killed. Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy Daybell, then dies in her sleep. So both of their spouses die. They end up together, and both of Lori's children go missing, and tragically, they're ultimately found buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. So Lori Vallow was on trial last spring. She was found guilty on all charges, and she's serving 3 life sentences. She's right now in Arizona awaiting a trial down there on those charges related to her 4th husband's death. Chad Daybell is now going to trial, starting today, where he could face the death penalty if he's found guilty. You got all that? Because there's a lot of people in a lot of places.
There is a lot of people and a lot of places. Before we jump into all of those details, can you explain a little bit more about Chad and Lori's doomsday beliefs? They talked about zombies and demons and people being possessed. How did those beliefs contribute to all of these alleged actions?
They were big into the end of times. In fact, they met, the 2 of them, at what was called a Preparing a People conference. And it's not associated with the LDS Mormon Church, but most of the people there were members of the church. So it's more of people like interested in, their food storage or preparedness, emergency preparedness, things like that. But Chad Daybell had written books for years and published books about end of days. A lot were fictional. But he wrote his autobiography, and he said that he had near-death experiences. And so Lori was attracted to stuff like that. And she went up to him at this conference, and they immediately connected. And he started to tell her that she was a goddess and that they had been married in previous lives and all of this kind of wacky stuff. And the friends have told me they just hit it off like it was a match with gasoline, just, a fatal explosion. So Chad Daybell allegedly had this list of people who were light and dark, and there was a scale, and you could be light at a certain level or dark at a certain level. And if you were dark and you got beyond a certain point, you became a zombie, like a zombie went into your body. And the only way to get that zombie out, according to his teachings and what friends have told us, is that you had to pray out that the zombie would go away or kill the person to kill the zombie.
Wow.
And so, so he had said that Charles, Lori's 4th husband, was a zombie, and that her children, JJ and Tylee, were possessed by zombies. And even his wife, his previous wife, that she had, I don't know if it got all the way to zombie status, but she was dark. And they could not remove that zombie or force from her. So it was a bunch of fringe beliefs that they seemed to kind of be making up or borrowing from other people, a little bit of, here and there. And that will come into the trial. I mean, it came into Lori's and it most definitely will in Chad's.
And was that what they were using to justify the deaths of these people or to justify their actions, alleged actions in regard to all the different people who died?
Right. Yeah. That's what they told their friends and family as justification. And even text messages came out in Lori's trial where Chad would say she's not, quite, I'm just paraphrasing, but she's not quite to zombie status or she's not there yet. And Lori's like, we need to hurry and get her there. It seemed the prosecutor made the point in Lori's trial, this is all about money, power, and sex. They brought in the religion thing, but they said that anything that got in the way of money, power, and sex, Chad and Lori tried to do away with. So yeah, would they use their religion to rationalize it? Absolutely. Chad was, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, was big in on this, and Chad was giving him blessings and special prayers that he could, fight off evil or whatnot. So there's definitely a lot of religious aspects that were used to justify these crimes, so it appears.
This episode is brought to you by ShipStation. If you run an e-commerce business, you know how much work it takes to produce something great while dealing with complicated shipping issues. That's why over 130,000 companies have turned to ShipStation, an innovative tool that allows you to focus less on shipping and more on building your brand. With ShipStation, you can manage orders, label printing, reporting, and customer service on one easy-to-use dashboard. You'll reduce warehouse costs with reliable enterprise solutions and save thousands on shipping costs with discounts up to 89% off. Plus, you can effortlessly import orders from everywhere you sell online. So, turn your shipping challenges into opportunities for growth. Go to ShipStation.com and use code POD to sign up for your free 60-day trial. That's ShipStation.com, code POD.
What charges is Chad Daybell facing?
Chad Daybell is charged with 3 counts of murder for his wife, Tammy Daybell, J.J. Vallow, and Tylee Ryan, and 3 counts of conspiracy to commit their murders for those 3 people. The co-conspirators are Lori Vallow and Alex Cox, her brother. And then he also faces the charge of insurance fraud. Before Tammy Daybell died, he went and the 2 of them moved her insurance plan from the lowest, life insurance plan from the lowest to the absolute maximum. And within days of her dying, he went to the school district and asked how he could cash that out. So yeah, those are the charges that he's facing.
What are the potential sentences for those charges if Chad is found guilty?
If Chad Daybell is found guilty on the murder charges, the first-degree murder charges, the prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. So he could he could be executed or he could face life in prison. Those are the 2 options. There's nothing further, and the jury will decide that. It's not like he could get 10 years, but if he's found guilty, those will be the 2 options. On the insurance fraud, the grand theft, on the conspiracy, he could get, I think on the theft and the other charge, it's 5 years minimum or something like that. But really what it boils down to is he'll either be facing life in prison or the death penalty if he's found guilty.
And I have a question for you, Nate. These crimes were allegedly committed in Madison County and Fremont counties. Those are on the other side of the state. So why is the trial being held in Ada County?
So there are far more people here in Ada County, where I am today, where you are as well. And the defense attorney for Chad Daybell argued that in Fremont County, which is a tiny county as far as population, that there couldn't be a fair and unbiased jury. And so they asked the judge if it could be moved. They put in a request, 2 or 3 years ago to say we need to move it to find a untainted jury pool. And so the judge granted it, and it was moved to Boise. Lori Vallow was held here. Granted, there are a lot of people that say everyone knows about this case, but you're more likely to find people in a largely populated area that haven't heard about it versus a tiny, eastern Idaho. So that's why we're here.
Fascinating. It is still fascinating to me that so many people or enough to make up a jury pool wouldn't know about this since it was such big news for so long.
Right. Well, they sent out, I think, 2,000 questionnaires to Ada County residents over the past few weeks. They had to fill out these in-depth questionnaires, like many, many, many pages. And they had to write down their thoughts about the death penalty and whatnot. And then they would whittle down those questionnaires, and they were brought in last week in groups of 16 at a time and questioned, like, have you heard about this case? What do you know about this case? And if people knew very little, then they would advance up. But it took a week and multiple groups of 16 to finally get 18 people on this jury that will decide Chad Daybell's fate. And the same thing happened with Lori Vallow's case. You could argue the publicity is more because her case brought a lot of publicity, and now we're doing it all over again a year later.
Yeah. And the final jury selection has happened, and opening statements are going to be given today. So is there anything you're expecting to hear in those opening statements?
Well, we kind of got a preview last year with Lori's case, but I think that the prosecutors, this case will be different in many ways. One is that Chad's facing a charge for murdering his wife. Lori did not face a murder charge for her. It was just conspiracy. He's also facing the death penalty, as I mentioned. So the stakes are, I don't want to say higher, but they kind of are, because this is his life could be on the line. As far as the opening statements are concerned, the prosecutor will get up and they will, this is like, go time. They have to really hit it out of the park for those jurors to really make a mark. And I still remember in Lori's case, they started off money, power, sex. Those were the first three words. I still remember them. And they consistently, beat that theme throughout the entire trial. They showed graphic autopsy photos right at the beginning of these dead people.
Wow.
They showed, it really made an impact. So I imagine there will be something similar with Chad's case. And then the defense, his attorney, will get a chance to get up and make his own opening statement. And that could be anything. I mean, you would imagine that he'll probably point the finger at Lori and Alex, but he could say anything. So that's what really gets the trial off and running. And then right after that, we'll start to see witnesses.
Do you think that this trial will be similar to Lori Vallow's trial, or do you expect kind of a different approach?
I think both. I think that we will see a lot of the same witnesses, but in a different order, maybe. I think that they'll bring in evidence that we haven't seen before. I think a lot of it, for those people that followed, it'll be like, yeah, we kind of already knew that, because the trials were originally together. They were going to be tried together up until last year, when the death penalty issue became a thing, and the judge ended up having to sever the trials because Lori wouldn't waive her right. She wanted a trial right away. Chad Daybell asked for a delay, so they split them up. So originally it was going to be one trial, but I think now that it is separate, this one's expected to go longer. Lori Vallow did not have a defense. Her attorneys did not put on a defense. Chad Daybell will. So there will be glimpses of the one from a year ago, but there'll also be new stuff as well.
You said there might be some new evidence. Is there anything you're watching for during this trial?
Yeah, the big thing I want to know is how Tammy Daybell died and who did it. We know that she died of asphyxiation, and we know that she had marks on her upper arms. So we know the cause of death, but what happened in that home at that moment, and who was it? Was it Chad? Will they have evidence to say, yes, it was Chad Daybell in that home? Or will his side be able to say, you have no proof that he was in that house? It could have been anybody walking by. Or it was Alex Cox, because we know that his phone pinged at the church just down the street that very night.
Oh,
so
really?
That'll be a big thing we're watching for. We know they proved through Lori Vallow's case that Chad Daybell was in the backyard with Alex around the time those children died and were buried on his property. That's going to be the big obstacle for the defense to overcome is, okay, you're saying he didn't do it, but those kids were buried outside your back door. That's the thing that it's like, okay, how do you get past that?
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see their approach on that too. So those are kind of the bigger things that I'm watching for. There'll be things along the way though that, at Lori Vallow's trial, a lot of text messages came out that we hadn't heard that kind of insinuated that this affair went on longer and was more passionate than we may have originally thought. And I think that there'll be more of those things here too.
Yeah, because prior to Tammy's death, somebody had shot at her and she thought it was with a paintball gun, correct? And
Right.
did we find out that that was Alex who had done, or allegedly Alex?
10 days before she died, she got home. It was later. It was in October, so it was dark. She pulled in the driveway, and she said that she wrote this on Facebook after the fact. She said, so I just pulled up, and a guy in a ski mask pulled up and started firing a paintball gun at me, and it didn't fire, and I screamed, and he ran off, and my husband and my son came running, and they called 911. They played those 911 calls at the trial. 10 days later, she dies in her bed. Well, come to find out, it wasn't a paintball gun. Based on Lori Vallow's trial, it was Alex Cox, and he had been down to Sportsman's Warehouse and bought ammunition and had gone to a shooting range and was practicing his shooting skills. And police say it was him, and they tracked his cell phone all around that home that night. And somehow that gun jammed or something happened with it. It didn't fire. And Tammy's life was spared that night, which that was a key piece. So yeah, that will likely come into play as well. That, Chad had burner phones from Walmart. He would go and activate these, prepaid cell phone plans and was texting Alex and Lori on all of these nights. So there's a lot of technology data that will be brought into this, and a lot of DNA data as well.
Wow. That's a lot.
Right.
And you said that you think this trial will go a little longer. How long are they estimating that this trial will last?
Well, Lori Vallow's trial, jury selection was a week, and then it was 5 weeks of testimony till we had a verdict. So that was 6 weeks. And then she was sentenced a few months later after a pre-sentence investigation was done. Chad Daybell's trial, already we had a week of jury selection. They're saying that the actual trial could be 8 to 10 weeks. And that is because, as I said, his defense will actually present a defense, whereas Lori's didn't. And once a verdict comes in, if it's guilty, immediately the jury will go into what's called the penalty phase. The jury decides the sentence. And that's when the prosecution will call witness after witness to try to prove that Chad Daybell deserves to die. And the defense will call witness after witness to try to prove that he deserves life in prison, that his life should be spared. So it's kind of like a second trial, and that could last a week, maybe 2. And then the jury will come back with that sentence. So we'll kind of have 2 verdicts here if he's found guilty. Then guilty, not guilty, and then the sentence. Whereas Lori's, we had to wait a little bit for that sentence. So all in all, it could go till the end of May, mid-June.
Wow. And what can we expect with this trial after the opening statements? What should we be looking for next?
So there'll be opening statements, and then there'll be witnesses and evidence. Lori Vallow's trial, there were 59 witnesses. Wow. I think there'll be more in this case. And some of those witnesses will take the stand, and they will be questioned for hours. Some 5 minutes. It's short. Some of them, they might play like a 911 call someone to the witness stand and say, is that you on that recording? Yes, it is. No further questions, just to get it on the record. But some of these detectives, there were detectives last time that took the stand for a full day, even 2 days. So it all depends on the expertise. I think that during the last trial, they sprinkled in the personal witnesses, like the family members, followed by law enforcement or the more technical witnesses. And they did a good job at kind of balancing that out, because if you put too many technical witnesses on the stand and you're doing a deep dive into DNA or cell phone towers, you might lose the jury a little bit. It might get a little too deep. And they did a good job at the last trial balancing that, so that you might have a technical witness, but then you'd have a real personal, interesting witness. And I think that they'll do that again. Another difference this trial is that the last one, the Madison County prosecutor, Rob Wood, led that one. This one, it's the Fremont County prosecutor. They're still working together, but Lindsay Blake will be the lead on this one, so she might have some different tactics.
Is that because Chad's house was technically in Fremont County?
Right. His house was about a mile over the line. And so because the crimes happened there, that's why she's leading it. But the kids were originally reported missing in Rexburg, which is in Madison County. So both counties have kind of been involved in it from the beginning. And it is a very complex case. They also have an attorney from the AG's office, Ingrid Beatty. She's helping with them. And then a deputy attorney from Lindsay Blake's office. So they've got 4 attorneys, and Chad Daybell has 1.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Nate. We really appreciate all of your coverage and your expertise, and that you were able to come on and discuss this with us while everything is picking up and the trial is starting.
Yeah, thanks for your interest. And of course, if you want to learn more, we have it at eastidahonews.com, or you can follow me on social media.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing to our Hey Boise newsletter. We'll be following the trial there as it unfolds. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more local stories from around the city. See you then.